evening from the Johannesburg studios. You are today hosted by Bavelile Hlongwa. I'm the Deputy Chairperson of the National Youth Development Agency. Welcome to Let's Have It Out. Tonight and every other night here on ENCA, a variety of different speakers or newsmakers get their chance to host this particular program, interview people who hold different views, and give you a chance to get involved in the conversation. Unfiltered and accountable and accessible. It all starts now. Let us discuss civic organizations like your NPOs, NGOs, etc. They are not driven by profit, but dedication to the given cause. They are often used for trust, cooperatives, advocacy, charity, environment, religious groups. But what role can they play in advancing youth development? Because we know that civic organizations rely on the dedication of employees who believe in that particular cause that they are meant for. It's hard for them to compete with private sector because of that. Funding becomes an issue for almost all NPOs as often as they rely on external sources like donations. Now, taking into account that there is a National Youth Development Agency Act in South Africa, we do know that the Act calls out civic organizations together with government and private sector to play a role of being implementers of youth development. And this they don't do independently, they do together with the NYDA, and they are expected to submit reports. We also know that it's not just that agency of government, but other government departments as well are able to work in partnership with civic organizations. And some institutions of government and private sector also work very well with civic organizations, and they do different programs. But in the case of youth development, we're looking at the role of NPO playing an educating role for young people, voter education, entrepreneurship development, patriotism, and make a difference in their own communities. To discuss this tonight, I am joined here in studio by Thembani Makata, who is the Deputy Secretary General of the South African Youth Council. But first, we want you to get involved in the conversation, and here is how.
Tweet us at ENCA using the hashtag LHIO. Call us on 011-759-6340 or send us a WhatsApp or WhatsApp video on 082-884-6370. And make sure those videos are no longer than 30 seconds, please.
Ms. Makata, you are a Deputy General Secretary. We are a Deputy Secretary General of South African Youth Council. What is SYC, and what organizations are allowed to affiliate to SYC?
A South African Youth Council is a youth organization, as you say. It's a civic organization. Most importantly is that all youth organizations, whether it's political and it's educational, it's recreational, it's anything, as long as it has to do with the youth development and the youth empowerment, those particular organizations can affiliate with SYC, and we then be able to have those organizations as member organizations, whom then will go to their TGAs and have their annual mandate being given, and then they have their national executive committees being elected or given a remandate. But basically, that's what the South African Youth Council is.
That is what is important. You are saying they do quite a lot of work, but what work and what is the contribution they've been making towards youth development currently? And as we had said when we were starting the show, that NPOs or all civic organizations will struggle with funding. How do you assist them with funding to actually run with all the youth development work that they do in different spheres?
In actual fact, if we were to say that the South African Youth Council is able to assist other member organizations financially, would be misrepresenting ourselves. Simply because, as you yourself have highlighted it as well, funding becomes a major issue. Funding and plus and assistance in terms of human resource, in terms of how we're able to implement our work. That has been a struggle that we have been faced with as an organization. But more than generally than that, we've been able to have programs working with NGOs. We've been working with NETLEC, we're working with the NYDA, and we work with some government departments that assist in terms of the programs being implemented, including some sitters that are able to come on board and assist the organization to make sure that we're able to have programs throughout the province that seek to develop the youth, whether it's in issues of artisanship, issues of learnerships, but we've been able to do those things here and here. But truthfully, the issue of funding has been one of the major issues that the organization has been facing.
Wonderful. So the issue of funding remains a fundamental challenge, whether we're speaking of civic organizations or government institution or any other independent youth organization that does work. So it means we all are struggling with money. But what is the value of affiliating, of affiliating as an NPO into Psyche? What is that? But before you answer, I would like to take up a caller. We have on the line Piwe from Newcastle. What's your comment on, well, I'll ask you for your comments after I've taken the caller.
Yes, Izzy, hello, how are you doing?
I'm good, how are you?
I'm fine, with Temban on the studio. I just want to ask a question. Does the NPOs and NGOs still relevant after the 25 years or so in democracy? Shouldn't we now, for young people, focus more on cooperatives? Because I think the government might be able to fund if there are cooperatives, because you know that young people will come and work together. Now, with the NPOs, they'll register the NPO, and after 5 years, they've forgotten about the NPOs. But the cooperative, the government will be able to have mentors that will be able to assist young people going forward. That was my question.
Thank you. Can I just get a clarity? You are saying in the space of civic organizations, let's start phasing out NPOs and focusing more on cooperatives.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you very much for your questions, Piwe. We have a caller. He's asking, are the NPOs, which are some of your affiliates? You said there's NGOs, there's there's cooperatives and different kinds of youth organizations that are affiliated to SAIC. Now he's saying NPOs seems to be getting irrelevant, and what he thinks will make sense is cooperatives. What are your thoughts?
Look, there are NPOs that are doing relatively very well. Mm-hmm. There are NPOs that have been able to establish themselves to get funding not only locally, but they've been able to get funding even internationally to be able to continue with their work. I don't think that saying let's remove the other one to replace it with the other one is going to really necessarily assist us. Remember that we're talking about people that are driving different causes in different dimensions. So we can't just want to box everything and say, then let's stop with these ones and to continue these ones. I think the important thing that in most with the youth sectors, what is important is how do we ensure that the cooperatives do what they're supposed to do, but in the same vein, the NPOs, the NGOs, and all those that are driving those specific causes are able to come through with that.
Thank you, Ms. Makata. We'll take a short break and we'll get back to this particular conversation.
Some arguments are best settled on the street.
Let's go for a little ride. Smoke. It don't matter if you win by an inch or a mile. Winning's winning.
Vin Diesel, Paul Walker, The Fast and the Furious, Sunday at 8 on E!
Okay, welcome back. My guest tonight is Thembani Makata, the Deputy Secretary General of the South African Youth Council, and we are discussing the role of civic organizations in advancing youth development. Ms. Makata, before we continue with our questions, we'd like to just quickly go through our comments and questions from social media, and we'll be continuing with our questions. Okay, there is a bit of a technical error there, we can't access them. We are going to go to a question that is asking what is the value of a youth NPO in a rural area somewhere to actually affiliate with psych? What value does it add on that group of young people who've already gotten their operating certificate with the Department of Social Development?
Look, one of the values that we sure can say it brings to join South African Youth Council for NPO, when you make an example and say even for the one that is in the rural areas, is that through our work and through our network and even through other organizations that are affiliated with SAIC, we're able to create a proper network, to create channels in terms of being able to network and assist in terms of where we can direct when one can get the issues of funding, the issues of even assisting on drafting of the business proposals with those who don't have. But in any grouping, there is always a value of knowing that you can get a better knowledge, you can get better access to network, but there is always that knowing that there is always an answer in terms of some of the questions that might arise in terms of the work that is being done by that particular NGO.
Thank you very much. Let's take a caller. We have Mceleni from Vryheid. Can we hear what are your questions and comments, Mceleni?
Yes, my question is not a comment.
It's a question, yes. We'll take
I heard that is from youth something, eh?
Is
representing youth.
My guest is a Deputy Secretary General of South African Youth Council.
Yes. So the question I just was is, that lady, do we have any program that can provide something like skills to develop our youth? Because in South Africa, we're suffering from that skill, from the not getting the skills, especially youth. You see, even let's make an example. Even a youth from me in South Africa can't even fix a TV. They can't even do a certain small thing like fixing the house, the building, or something like that from the primary level. Because you can't just say people must finish matric, must go to varsity. Others, they can't even read, they can't even study because they don't know how to study, they don't know how to do whatever. But if they can get that skills, they can do more. We can change South Africa by that. We need that skills from the primary level.
Thank you very much, Mceleni. Ms. Makata, what will be your comment and response to the question that Mr. Mceleni from Vryheid has asked?
I think fundamental to the question is asking what is the South African Youth Council doing in terms of making sure that the South African youth has a better life and there's a development. Look, we have been working with different organizations, with government, and just recently SAIC has been very active and in the forefront of the recent job summit that we had that was hosted by NEDLEC. We have been participating in that ever since its inception. And we have made it a point that our views are heard to make sure that the youth development, the creation of jobs, even the issue of when we're talking about cooperatives, businesses, and everything else that speaks to youth development, our voice is heard, and even the views that the South African Youth Council brought found expression in the Job Summit. So I think those are one of the things that we are doing as an organization. Advocacy is very important, even from our side, and we take it very important. It's advocacy. We are lobbying to ensure that even though we are having the constraint resource-wise, but we make sure that the influence and what needs to be done by the government in South Africa and the private sector, those particular issues, we voice them out and we make sure that at some level they are being taken in to be implemented as we go forward.
Thank you very much, Ms. Makata. The questions that we've asked you were just mostly about what you guys are about. But we do know that the Act of the NYDA does give you a responsibility of being a player, and you are required to submit, first you are required to take a national mandate in terms of youth development and the focus areas. And I do know that you participated in the integrated youth development strategy, and you will obviously know what is in the strategy currently as it goes through approvals. So can we expect that the Psyche will be starting to do some work, particularly around health and wellness and nation building? Can we expect that we see more programs focusing in that particular area as per the integrated youth development strategy and the national youth policy?
There's definitely no doubt about that. The South African Youth Council will be in the forefront. I think even the relations that are being forged are being created and worked on between the South African Youth Council and the NYDA. Those are actually the platforms that actually provide for those particular programs to be implemented, and the voicing out in terms of what should be happening as we move forward with the implementation of the integrated youth strategy.
What should we do with funding? What should we do with funding? Currently, there's no funding for youth development. It's priority number 2 after unemployment in the country, and the funding is currently sitting at about 400 million for roughly about 20 million young people, which means we spend about 20 rands per young person per year to do any form of youth development. What are your suggestions? What do you have in your mind? What can we do differently to get funding into the youth development space?
Look, one thing is for sure is that we tend to look very much to the government first, to say in their allocation in terms of funding for youth development, there needs to be an increment. But more so importantly is that we need to have a stronger forcing hand in terms of how the private sector on its own is also going to contribute towards that particular funding. Not just be a matter of contributing, but it makes sure that in its contribution, it plays a role. It plays a role in assisting implementing of the youth development. It plays a role in even ensuring that the policies that we draft are implemented, but they monitor even the implementation, how it goes. So I feel like at times in South Africa we are good at drafting policies. We do them so well, we plan and we understand the strategic point of where we want to see the youth. But the issue comes when we have to do the implementation. Somehow we lack on how we're supposed to do the implementation, and further from that, the monitoring and the evaluation of the work of the implementation of that particular policy is not there. Even if the evaluation is there and we find that there's a default in the implementation, the corrective measures are not there. There is no punitive matters. We just note that we did wrong here and there, and then what? I think that the government must increase the funding, yes, but most importantly, most people that benefit from the youth when it's developed is the private sector. And if the private sector is not putting a bigger hand, a bigger chunk in terms of funding and assisting, and it doesn't do it by choice, it must be something that is put out there that they are supposed to do it, and if they don't do it, there are consequences for that.
Thank you very much, Timbani. You are saying private sector must come on board. They must contribute towards youth development. We have a caller from Pretoria, Ntuanano. Ntuanano. Thank you very much. What's your question, Ntuanano?
Hi, my name is Ntuanano. My question is, I've registered an NPO. I was advised to register an NPO because the schools that I assist in Soweto, I went to primary school in Shawela. So when I was there, we always had this thing of story skirmish and battle of the book. So my school from Shawela will go and compete with other schools in Klipspruit West. Then the only thing that you get to win, it was the certificate to show that you participated. And only to find out in school, there were people that were very good in poetry, debate, and everything. But then the only time we're going to express ourselves, it was when there's an event taking place in school. If there was 2 events, it means the only time we're going to be doing poetry and debate, it was going to be on those certain times. So I opened an NPO, registered an NPO, so that we can be able to assist these learners, because there are other people who are very good in certain things and not only in the classroom, because we believe that learning doesn't only happen in the classroom. So that those who are very passionate about poetry and debate and public speaking, which is something they want to follow even after school, high school or anything. But just because they come from small communities and there's not so much resources and everything. So we try to open an NPO so that we make competitions among schools around Shawela. When they grow, we can try to compete with others. So, but then our problem is there's been funding because we don't get enough funding. We never even have received funding. The only thing that I do right now is just to go visit the schools, help them, retrain them in debate and everything. I've been trying to apply for funding so that we get books and everything. Some other organization even advised me that I must do a launch, and then when I do a launch, everyone will come and donate, and also then they'll come and donate books, but then only if I do the launch. So I've been trying to organize to make the launch, but then the launch also needs resources to make it happen. And if you can check, it's almost year end. Schools will be closing right now. So I don't know what to do. I was asking, since I'm speaking with the NYDA Deputy Secretary and also with the Youth Councillor, what will be your advice to make this organization to be successful so that we can help these learners? Because you can really tell that they're very passionate about this thing, but then the resources, they're not there. What do we do?
Thank you very much, Ntanano, for your question. I am certain that the South African Youth Council will respond. But I think what I can say to you is that currently at the NYDA, we do have an incubation program for new NPOs, just to give them skills on how we request for funds, the basics of running an NPO. So we can advise you to come through to our offices and we can assist you to take you through to that particular kind of training. But I think the call and the questions and the comments of Ntanano tie up to the discussion we're just having with Tembani right here on private sector participating and contributing financially to the support of developing a young person in South Africa. And I'm sure they are listening and they will come on board. We are coming towards the closure, but we want to say, Ms. Makata, the collaborations, I know that departments like your Department of Social Development will also look into NPOs and collaborate with some, depending on what are they doing versus what the department's priorities are. I want to just get a feel of how many of your NPOs or NPOs and NGOs and cooperatives that are aligned or are affiliated into Psyche, how many do get those opportunities? Is the work that probably Psyche will do in terms of lobbying different government departments and private sector to say, look, this is the work that our NPOs are doing that are affiliated to us, and we're looking for collaborations. Is there any kind of projects like those that the Psyche is running currently?
Look, as part of even being an affiliated organization, the part of the documents that we require outside your constitutions and how you're operating includes that particular program of action. So we get this particular program of action, and when we get a chance to meet with the different departments, we then look through our database in terms of which ones have a program that would at least speak in terms of what is being done in that department. It is a bit of an unfortunate, because most of the times we get these meetings with these governments, and you seemingly have a somehow promising meeting that is going to bear some fruits. But it has been very difficult to such an extent that, like the caller that was saying, that I think that governments at times look for NPOs that are already established. They don't want to invest in terms of making sure that the ones that are coming to their doors and knocking are being taken through to grow and become as efficient as others or as influential in achieving. So most of the problems, those are the challenges we're facing, but basically, the programs of action submitted to us by the member organization, those are what we go to departments with in terms of assisting, seeking assistance and making sure that they are being assisted to implement their programs.
Thank you very much, Ms. Makata. I think we are nearing the close, as I had indicated. But thank you very much for coming through to the show. I think the conclusion... Pardon? The conclusion is that from this discussion, there is a role that the psyche is playing in terms of advancing youth development, and all forms of NPO that are affiliated there, even those that are not affiliated. And there's a lot of partnerships that will then be formed with different government stakeholders and private sector and so forth. But the issue, the basic issue is around the funding of youth development, and that's it for tonight. And thank you for listening.